I just want to say a little bit about the exhibition. We've set things up in here. There's some bits of display in here for you to look at. There's also some behind, but there's also, for those that can manage, there's an internationals ministry element in there, and people like Reese, who's going to give us a little wave there, Anna, they will be ferrying or be prepared to take you over. So if you think it's quite crowded in here, you could start over there. And as we said in the main hall, if you were in there, our bookshop and coffee shop is also open. If I forget to say something, hopefully somebody will give me just a little bit of a nudge. The exhibition is really to highlight 125 years of God's goodness to us in the Heath. If you're a long-standing resident of Cardiff, how many churches you might have driven by which are no longer the purpose for which they were first built. And we're very grateful at Heath that we have been kept as we have for so long, for 125 years here. A testimony to God's goodness and raising up men with vision. I will mention one man in particular, and that is the Reverend John Pugh. Now, he was part of what's called the Forward Movement, which is a church organization of the Presbyterian Church designed to go into a territory which had no churches. He was very much taking things out into areas, into the community where there wasn't a Christian place of worship. And this place in particular, if we were to cast our minds back, in fact, if we were here 125 years ago, there's no building. You'd be sat on an area of sort of open land. But the main building would have been the Maindy Barracks. And that Maindy Barracks, obviously, lots of soldiers. We've got residential houses, a few shops coming, and an area where there was a real need. And one of the posters over there, there's a little square, rectangle one there, makes mention of mothers in the district saying we've got nowhere where we can go and hear something to do with the Christian faith. So over there is the beginning of the formation of this, not this building, but the hall, if you've been in there, Heath Hall in 1900, which comes from tent missions, then eventually a hall. 18 people, 18 members, and by about 5 years, there were over 200 people squashing into the hall. So John Pugh, being the kind of gentleman he was, will build a big church building. And that church building is the one that we're in now that was opened in 1906. Then the story will continue behind there in what we call the lecture room. There's one or two bits and pieces on the wall as well to look at. And it tells the story of the church, not in great detail, but hopefully enough to convey to you what we've been about for 125 years. I'd also draw attention to the fact that there are some verses from the Bible that are around the building, because it's the Bible message of Jesus Christ that we're very much about as a church. We've done many other things in terms of food and children's work and warm banks, but it's the message of salvation through Jesus Christ is our core thing for 125 years. I would also draw attention to the World War I and World War II plaques, which I've sat near those plaques for over 40 years and really have known very little about those people. So I'm indebted to Nick Davey, who's done some research on that. There's a bit of information about some of the characters, some of the soldiers, a few images of how this church, our experiences here, particularly in proximity to the barracks, in World War I and World War II. I'm also greatly indebted to the late Leighton Hargist, who really was an expert historian and church archivist, for whom a lot of these materials he sourced and provided for once again. So that's enough from me. Did I make it? Well, there we are, about 8 minutes. That's what I said I'd do. So we've recorded some interviews with some of our older members, hopefully to shed light on their experiences of the church, their memories, and also what's on their heart now in the year 2025. But we've also got Richard Coombe here, who's, would it have been your father, had a shop on Whitchurch Road, and I can see that his name is mentioned on the bottom of a 1918 Heath Church booklet, and which you can see in there. So it's not this Mr. Coombe in 1918, but it's his father. So someone's going to come out now and interview Richard Coombe here. He'll come to the front with Kerry. And I'll pass this one to Keith. Thank you. Oh, just before they do, there is a little book here. And in here, there's a book which I'll leave on the side there, encouraging you, if you've got memories of Heath you'd like to record, then jot those memories into the book. It doesn't have to be long, it might be something of special significance to you, and that book will be on the side there. And it's the kind of thing then that I think we'd like to put into our church archive for future generations. So that book will also be in there. So thank you.
Have you got a clip, Richard? Have you got a clip?
No.
Have this one.
It's cool. Which television camera do I need? Thank you. How do I clip it onto anything?
Well, thanks, Richard, for being willing to be interviewed. And perhaps just at the beginning, I'll just say that you look a lot younger than you are. Do you mind my asking what age you are?
Have a guess.
Well, I know, but you tell them.
102.
No. Well, I was born 6 months before the Second World War. You work it out.
So, he's older than he looks. There we are. And
I should be 87 in 4 months.
there we are. There we are. So you're very well preserved, I must say. But,
Three facelifts, that is.
but do tell us what your earliest connection with the church was.
Well, the first question is, when did you first come to the church?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, it would have been around about 1947 when I first came here. My grandparents came to Cardiff from Cornwall in 1910, and they opened a business across the road. That's my grandfather. My father would have been 4 years old at that point, and they would have worshipped here in 1910. That's a long way back, isn't it? 115 years. But my parents, when we, after the war, my father came back from the war, and his father then died, so my father took over the business in Whitchurch Road here. Do you remember the original bookshop?
Yeah.
Yes, well, that's where our business was. And we left Rubina and came to live here. My parents sent my brother and I, my older brother and I, here to Sunday school. So that's my first connection with the church, coming to Sunday school. I would have been about 8 years of age. And that's my first time I came to the church.
Where were you actually living when you came to the church? Were you
Above the shop, yes.
above the shop?
Yes, everybody lived above their premises, yes.
Okay. I'm going to hand over to Keith in a minute, but just before I do that, when did you actually become a Christian rather than just a churchgoer?
Well, when I went to school, we went to a grammar school in Cardiff, and we were taught the New Testament, for which I'm always very grateful. We learnt the scriptures, the New Testament. The man who taught us wasn't a Christian, but we did learn the New Testament. So that early teaching sort of came through. I suppose we ought to go back a little bit further, really. Coming to Sunday school for many years, from the age of 8, and I would have been in my middle teens, 16 or 17, when I actually became a believer, when I first became a Christian. Okay. So that's about the age that I became a Christian, after a long, hard struggle.
Who was the minister then?
Jack Sharman was the minister, Reverend Jack Sharman,
So
from China Inland Mission.
Yeah, so he was they'd been thrown out, the missionaries had been thrown
Yes.
out of China.
Yes, they turned out of China.
So in 1950, about then?
He came here in 1954
Okay,
and was here 7 years.
thanks.
Yes, he was in Saltmead before they called him to this church.
Right.
Glyn Owen was in the pulpit when I came here first. I just remember him in Sunday school anniversary service.
Yeah, you might be interested to know about Glyn Owen, a previous minister here. He had been a a reporter with the Western Mail, I think. And he wasn't a Christian, but his boss was.
Oh.
And he sent him to cover an evangelistic mission. And he was converted.
Wow.
And later became the minister. Over to you, Keith.
Okay, Richard. What did your family make of your conversion?
My father was a regimental sergeant major in the war. He was not amused when my brother and I professed conversion. In fact, he was very angry. Made didn't cover that idea up at all. So, but my brother actually left home at the age of about 17 to go and work in de Havilland's aircraft factory up in Leavesden. So I was left home facing the brunt of my father's anger.
Your older brother was converted.
Yes, he was converted mainly through Viv and Joan Taylor. Some of you remember Viv and Joan Taylor? Well, Viv was quite instrumental in my brother's conversion.
Good.
So we went away as a new Christian and used to keep writing to me and sending me little bits of scripture and stuff. It was lovely.
Good. Good.
But
So, Richard, tell us then your earliest memories of the church and for yourself, and then memorable events that have happened in your lifetime here.
well, it's a strange thing to say, but coming to Sunday school was probably my main connection with the church in my early years, from 8 years up to my teens. And I wasn't a church goer in those days, but I did come to Sunday school in the afternoon. As Muriel said, there were a lot of people in Sunday school. Stan Brown, some of you remember Audrey Brown recently. She died, when did Audrey die? A few years back?
Audrey Peters.
Well, she became Audrey Peters, yes. Well, Stan Brown, her brother, used to lead the Sunday school here. There had been 50 or 70 children in the Sunday school. And he was a lovely Christian, absolutely lovely man. And the choruses that he taught us, I still sing today. I'm a lovely, lovely Christian man. Why was I saying all that? Anyway, the strange thing to say was that I started coming to church as a result of St. Mark's Church in Gabalva here. St. Mark stood at the top of the crossroads before they moved it, before the interchange was built. And every Sunday morning they would ring the church bell. Have you ever heard a church bell ring? It just said, come on to church. Come on to church. Just a single note. Then at 11 o'clock, the note would change. And it was then, come on, you're late. Come on, you're late. And it sort of hit me, I thought, I should be going to church. Why am I not going to church? So I remember one morning I got up, put on my clothes and came to church. I think my parents were a bit gobsmacked, but anyway, I came. And I've been coming ever since. It's something stirred in my heart. God used that bell ringing to sort of ring a bell in my heart. It was quite extraordinary.
What events, Richard, in and around the church are in your mind now? What could you recall for us?
Several events stick out in my mind. Like Muriel said, we used to have the YPF group, used to meet, the Young People's Fellowship, which were lovely. It's probably when I got to know you first, Keith, was it? When did you come to the church?
Could be. I'll tell him this afternoon.
I want you to tell me now.
So come this afternoon and you get my little life story.
We'll all be asleep in bed by this afternoon comes. So the YPF, Sunday School YPF, coming into membership when I was probably in my late teens, just before Jack Sharman left. I was terrified. We had to stand on the platform here and give a testimony in front of the whole church. And I was absolutely petrified. The only thing I said that made any sense was, whereas once I was blind, now I see. That's the only verse that came into my mind. When Marilyn will support this, there we are, Marilyn. Can you remember when we joined the choir, Marilyn?
Not exactly when.
No, but you and John and I, we joined the choir, didn't we? And I think that's the first thing I ever did when I started coming to church, was to join the choir. And it's been a blessing all my life. Joining the choir was an amazing thing for me. I started learning hymns. And hymns have been with me all my life. They've been a wonderful part of understanding Scripture. Hymns that I went through the hymn book this morning, and I started writing down all the numbers. It was extraordinary. But hymns have been a very major part of my life. It's been lovely. And we had one man in the choir called Jeff Bray. He was a direct descendant of Billy Bray. Did any of you know that? No, he was a direct descendant of Billy Bray, the famous Cornish preacher. I admired, I loved his tenor voice. He had a wonderful tenor voice. I didn't have a tenor voice, I'm afraid. Also remember Jack Sharman leaving and Vernon and Morwin coming. And they were called into the ministry in 1962, and they came. They were quite memorable events. I remember Whitsun treats, like Muriel was saying. Harvest festivals. I remember guarding the church when we separated from the ministry, from the Presbyterian. And also the big division in 1985 when the church was split. And we had that dreadful, awful experience. It broke our hearts. Yeah.
What year were you married? Were you married here?
Yes, I was. I was married in 1967. Vernon married Bobby and I, yes.
And do tell us the story of how you came to be involved in prison visiting.
Prison visiting.
There's a story behind it, isn't
That's
there?
quite a long story. I'll cut it short. Well, I trained in Wildings when I left school in 1955. I trained for 3 years in Wildings in town, a retail store. They had 3 stores in Cardiff. I went to the one in St John's Square. When I left there, I then went back to my family business and worked for my father. Big mistake. Don't ever do work for your father. Don't do it. It doesn't work. Why was I saying that?
How you came to get involved in the prison ministry.
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah. Anyway, I worked for him for 20 years. In 1967, I married Bobby. The same year, I negotiated to purchase the property and the business from my father. And he was able to retire. So I ran the business for 20 years then with Bobby. After a couple of years after he took over the business, we had an event took place. A family came into the shop one day, a husband, a man, 2 women and 2 children, all with big old bags in their hands. And they just looked around and we just sort of were polite to them. But they walked off with a very expensive leather coat, which they didn't pay for. I was very, very annoyed. That was about a week's profit gone down the drain. Anyway, I was absolutely furious. If I got hold of the man, I think I'd have strangled him. I never knew I could feel such anger or hatred for someone, but I did. Anyway, I thought, well, as a Christian, I shouldn't feel that way. What should I do? So I suddenly thought, well, I need to pray about it, otherwise it's going to destroy me. So I prayed that God would bring some good out of what was to me was a very evil event. A couple of weeks later, about a fortnight later, Bobby and I were in town. We went into town, into Queen Street. We were shopping. Well, she was shopping, I was walking, if you know what I mean. She wanted to go to M&S, and I wanted to go to Bud Morgan's to see the toy shop down the road there. Anyway, she went that way, and I went this way. Queen Street was a one-way street in those days, with islands in the middle. And as I turned to go that way to Bud Morgan's, just opposite the castle, I looked across the road, and there, standing in the middle of the road, was a man, 2 women, and 2 children, with shopping bags in their hands. Now, I don't know whether you believe in miracles, but that was amazing. Why? I never went into town normally, never did any. I hated going into town. So I dashed down the road, got hold of Bob, and said, look, there they are, there's the people. So we followed them back to the Hayes, where they got into a car, and they drove off. We noted the number of the car, went to the Central Police Station, reported the event, and 3 days later, a detective came into the shop. He said, you're pleased to know we've raided the house where they lived in Ely. They found the place stuffed with stolen goods. He said, your jacket was probably the best thing they ever had in the place. It was a very nice leather jacket. Anyway, as a result of that, they cleared up a whole mass of thefts and stealing and stuff going on, you know. And the man eventually was sent to prison. As a result of that, I said to the man, I said, well, if he does go to prison, and he did for a short time, can I visit him? He said, no, you can't do that. It's not feasible, not possible. A few weeks later, another man came into the shop. His name was Arthur Porter. He lived in Inglefield Avenue. He said, I'm in charge of prison visiting in Cardiff. I hear you want to go and visit someone in prison. I said, well, yes. I explained the situation. And he said, well, would you like to visit Cardiff prison? I said, well, all right, I'll give it a try. One verse always stuck in my mind, you know, where the Lord says, I was in prison and you visited me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. As you've done to the least of one of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. That's always stuck in my mind, that verse. I don't know why, but it's bang. So I said, yes, okay. So he took me to prison one day. It was a terrifying experience, I can tell you. Going in those huge doors. As a result, I spent 38 years visiting Cardiff prison once a week for 2 hours on a Thursday night, yeah. So that was my prison visiting experience.
Richard, we're at the point, I think, of the last issue. What are you praying for our church just now?
Good question. Well, I wrote a whole lot of things here. But I'm going to read a hymn instead, if you don't mind. I went to this hymn book last night. This is the hymn book we used to use in the church. Anybody remember that? Paul does, yeah. We've had several hymn books since. Well, listen to the lovely words in this hymn. And hymns have meant so much to me over the years. There's so many I wrote a whole list of numbers I could have read out, which I love. This is the prayer I have for myself and for the church, and I hope for everybody here. It's hymn 254, written by Bessie Porter Head, 1850 to 1936. Sorry, my voice is a bit dry. O breath of life, come sweeping through us. Revive thy church with life and power. O breath of life, come, cleanse, renew us, and fit thy church to meet this hour. O wind of God, come bend us, break us, till humbly we confess our need. Then in thy tenderness remake us. Revive, restore, for this we plead. O breath of love, come, breathe within us, renewing thought and will and heart. Come, love of Christ, afresh to win us. Revive thy church in every part. Revive us, Lord, is zeal abating when harvest fields are vast and white? Revive us, Lord, the world is waiting. Equip thy church to spread the light. Prayer for us all.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Richard, for sharing all of those things. I'm sure we can echo Richard's prayer as well. So thank you all very much for listening in. I think I'll pray before we end this little session. Heavenly Father, we thank you for every providence in your kindness you've brought into our lives. And we ask now your kind blessing upon us and upon Richard.